Hello students, and welcome to another video from Excel English, where we are analysing one of the poems from Carol Ann Duffy's Meantime collection. On this occasion we will be looking at the penultimate poem in your anthology, which is the poem Close or Close, could be either one of those homophones. As you know, my recommendation is very strongly that you have your own secure personal reading of this poem before you begin studying it. If you have studied it before in class, then definitely reread a couple of times to get familiar with it. If this is the first time you are reading it, you need to read it multiple times to really get a sense on your own of what is going on in the poem. And where possible, you need to experiment with these ideas of voice, pace, and expression. Close. Lock the door. In the dark journey of our night, two childhoods stand in the corner of the bedroom, watching the way we take each other to bits, to stare at our heart. I hear a story told in sleep in a lost accent. You know the truth. Undress. A suitcase crammed with secrets bursts in the wardrobe at the foot of the bed. Dress again. Undress. You have me like a drawing, erased, coloured in, untitled, signed by your tongue. The name of a country written in red on my palm. Unreadable. I tell myself where I live now, but you move in close till I shake. Homeless, further than that. A coin falls from the bedside table, spinning its heads and tails. How the hell can I win? How can I lose? Tell me again. Love won't give in. It makes a hired room tremble with the pity of bells, a cigarette smoke itself next to a full glass of wine. Time ache into space, space wants no more talk. Now it has me where I want me, now you do. Put out the light. Years stand outside on the street, looking up to an open window, black as our mouth, which utters its tuneless song. The ghosts of ourselves, behind and before us, throng in a mirror, blind, laughing and weeping. They know who we are. This rather bleak poem describes a clandestine love affair taking place in a hotel room and explores those feelings of desire and guilt combined. So I would say that in terms of themes, love, desire, passion and obsession are all powerful themes here. Also we have those the themes related to the secrecy and guilt, the anonymity and identity in the poem. There is also certain representations of innocence and loss of innocence and indications of kind of loss of childhood innocence. The poem is written in the first person and is addressed to a lover, a familiar technique in some of these poems that are addressed in the second person to a subject. So it gives that confessional and intimate perspective in that it appears itself as a kind of a conversation between two intimate lovers. Your own decision you will have to come to as to what you think Duffy is trying to convey about ideas like desire and guilt and the way that we work those two things out in our lives. What distinctive language features are present in this poem? There are a number of notable fragments and short sentences which appear at the beginnings of each stanza, forming an important aspect of discourse structure. We have lock the door, undress, unreadable. These almost seem to sometimes make the poem feel like a narrative as the action develops and as we see the kind of the relationship between these two people move forward. These also, I think, form a rhythmic break that slows the pace of each stanza. They are quite regular and they add this very solemn gravity to the voice delivering the poem. They also, I think, are cohesive, as I mentioned, because they foreground a following idea or progress. If you want to view the poem as a narrative, they kind of progress, dress, undress, dress. They show related events progressing. Grammatical person in this poem is used significantly. The first, second, third and inclusive perspectives are all present, and sometimes in some quite strange and interesting ways. There are shifts in perspective from that inclusive perspective, which unites the two lovers in their identity, our knight, to individual kind of broken use of person divided into the first and second. I hear something, 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 you know the truth, presenting a kind of division between the two people. These semantic deviations also use grammatical person. One example is the description of the black as our mouth, the idea that the two lovers could share a mouth is of course one with its own sexual connotations, but the effect of using our mouth, using the inclusive perspective to describe something that is normally singular, is another way of creating a kind of unnatural register in the poem. Finally, there is a shift to third person in this disembodied representation of the lovers as these ghosts of ourselves, perhaps this idea of the loss of childhood innocence represented through this image of the ghosts. Throughout the poem, we see imperative sentence functions used over and over again. Those dress again, undress. These also might contribute to a sense of kind of urgent physical desire felt between the two lovers. Here's a section for close analysis that's worth looking at. If you look at the lexis and semantics as highlighted in red there are a number of unusual semantic choices which help foreground a kind of disorientation in the perspective, perhaps the effects of desire disorientating the world. So we have this personification, of love won't give in, which of course gives love human characteristics, suggesting perhaps a disempowerment, how love has this will of its own, making the two lovers perhaps powerless to resist what they feel driven to do. These distorting powers of love are also described as making the room tremble with the pity of bells. I think this is really a piece of figurative language with some sexual connotations related to tremble, which I think probably describes the effects of orgasm. But pity of bells is really an almost funereal image, having these connotations of death. So juxtaposing, I think, sexual desire and death is a pattern semantically in this poem, a really quite disturbing one. Death perhaps acting as a kind of metaphor for the loss of innocence that results in giving away to desire. A number of confusing uses of language or grammatical or pragmatic inconsistencies where readers are forced to interpret meaning beneath the text. Present in the green there, where something has me where I want me. To have something where you want it normally is a way of expressing how you have control or manipulation of a subject. Those aren't usually the same thing. You don't normally say I have me where I want me, because presumably you're always in control of you. So this is a kind of deviation, a grammatical and pragmatic deviation here that presents that idiom paradoxically. A paradox being a situation that doesn't make sense or seems by its very definition not to make sense. So I think this is a way of communicating feelings of loss of control in this situation, or almost a separation of the self, if you're into that kind of complex psychological idea. Grammatically, there are many strange little repetitions and strange grammatical uses here in this kind of poetic and quite melodramatic register. The present tense, we have tense shifts where the present tense is used to give these events a kind of timelessness and immediacy. We also have the use of asyndetic listing to present events, which always, when there are no connectives in lists, it feels slightly fragmented or disjointed, almost like a kind of a loose montage of images. Also, this is an effect that Duffy uses throughout many of her poems. She uses listing with kind of grammatical inconsistencies amongst elements in lists, if that makes sense. So she will list noun phrases, but also throw a verb phrase into the list, which always seems slightly dissonant kind of grammatical technique, because as you read a list, you start to predictably expect the same grammatical form to feature in that list. When Duffy deviates from this, it always has a slightly jarring effect, I feel. So those jarring or unpredictable effects are also present in these odd kind of fragmentary echoing repetitions that she makes, particularly in that highlighted blue sentence. Now it has me where I want me, now you do. Almost a kind of a garbled or confused grammatical structure. Again, a kind of representation of almost the delirium of desire that these individuals are suffering. So a bleak poem, but certainly a very evocative one, that does a lot to convey this kind of urgent desire, but also some very, very dark aspects to sexual desire. In comparing this poem, you might look at the way that this poem compares love with first love. First love is a very positive and a very idealistic and beautiful poem reflecting on first love. Certainly doesn't have the same connotations of regret or the same bleakness that this poem has. You could think about the way you present, or the way that Duffy presents the idea of regret in Meantime and in this poem. This poem, of course, represents a kind of a clandestine connection or an affair, whereas Meantime shows a breaking up of a relationship. So the progression and the ending of relationships and how regret is presented in those two situations would make an interesting comparison. Representations of place connected to the hotel room, and possibly, for example, looking at the way that the home is presented in the middle stanzas of Never Go Back. Or finally, and quite interestingly, I think, because they're quite diverse poems in many ways, the way that obsession is presented in Biographer and in this poem. This poem, I would argue, is about sexual obsession, whereas Biographer is about something else, some kind of professional obsession, but also related to perhaps desires of intimacy and possession. So there are many different choices you can make, and you can make your own decisions, or maybe you have a better idea and you can pick your own. Just as a few final words, here is a poem from James Fenton, a fantastic poem that may be interesting for you, doubly so if you are studying the Paris anthology, because it has its own interesting representation of Paris as a kind of romantic place to go, and it's about what people get up to when they have hotel rooms together. It's called In Paris With You. Don't talk to me of love. I've had an earful and I get tearful when I've downed a drink or two. I'm one of your talking wounded. I'm a hostage. I'm marooned, but I'm in Paris with you. Yes, I'm angry at the way I've been bamboozled and resentful at the mess I've been through. I admit I'm on the rebound and I don't care where are we bound. I'm in Paris with you. Do you mind if we do not go to the Louvre? If we say sod off to sodding Notre Dame, and we skip the Champs-Élysées and remain here in this sleazy old hotel room, doing this and that to what and whom, learning who you are, learning what I am. Don't talk to me of love. Let's talk of Paris, the little bit of Paris in our view. There's that crack across the ceiling, and the hotel walls are peeling, and I'm in Paris with you. Don't talk to me of love. Let's talk of Paris. I'm in Paris with the slightest thing you do. I'm in Paris with your eyes, your mouth. I'm in Paris with all points south. Am I embarrassing you? I'm in Paris with you. Thanks for your focus and attention, guys. Drop me a thumbs up or say hello in the comments if you feel it's been useful. And don't forget to check out the other videos in the series. Good luck with your revision.